their country, their citizens, to reach the outside world and see content and new ideas that are contrary to the regime. Italy, they rank a lot higher on the list, but still not great. Southeast Asia in general. This whole region is quite red, which puts your score down towards the bottom. And Pakistan, right? All the way 158. This is kind of where I get to one of the maybe more palatable arguments. This is from a YouTuber, No Rugrats. He says you should download a car. Parker was saying at the beginning, oh, I wouldn't download a car, but we all have seen those like ad campaigns, right? You shouldn't download a car. And the title of his video is Piracy is Morally Correct. And one of his key main arguments that he puts in this video is that piracy allows for the preservation of digital culture. And it allows for the evasion of censorship. Again, this is not legal advice, and take what you will from this conversation. I still am not sure where I fall on this spectrum of whether or not it is right to pirate, but I want to bring up a few other points, right? VPNs. How many of you guys use VPNs to watch content from like UK or other countries? Yeah? My family, I used to live in China, authoritarian country, right? We had to use VPN to access Google and our Gmail, to access Netflix. Or doing what the Egyptians are doing to get content that they can't get in their country. And we had no problem with that morally, but that was breaking Chinese law. So you have to ask yourself, is breaking the law, like if you've already crossed that boundary, is that okay? Maybe not. How many of you have ad blockers? There you go. Just this the past month, Linus Tech Tips and a bunch of other YouTubers have been noticing a problem with their view counts and their revenues tanking. And this was due to a funny piece of code in a GitHub program that a lot of the ad blockers use in the way it connected to the YouTube API, so that those views were no longer counted, period. So view counts dropped, and their availability on the platform dropped, and they lost a lot of revenue. Linus from Linus Tech Tips regularly argues that ad blockers are piracy. You're stealing from the online content creators who get their revenue from advertising. And again, you may or may not agree with that, but it brings an interesting counterpoint, right, to this argument. Is piracy okay or not okay? Who gets the money and who should be rewarded for their pay? There's an example that he provides in this video that kind of covers the situation that we talked about. This is a movie review. An individual said like he's been wanting to watch this movie. It is only playing in theaters in his country, so far away from him. And he found it on a streaming platform, Disney+, but only available in India. So then he signs up for a VPN. He then signs up for an Indian Disney Plus account, but he needs a phone number. So he signs up for a digital phone number. Oh, but he needs, but Disney blocks fake phone numbers or digital phone numbers, which a lot of institutions are considering. I know at Utah State we're considering this or have talked about it. So he found a vendor and bought a local SIM card and then bought the Disney Plus subscription. He tried all of these steps to do it the right way when he could have, streamed it and downloaded it from a torrent. So if piracy is not palatable to you in terms of preserving culture, I guess, because that's another one of the additional arguments that YouTube creator commented on, is that with digital rot, things die, and the way to preserve things is by having copies. We all know the 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies, 2 mediums, and 1 remote location. It's kind of the same thing in preserving digital media and preserving in libraries too, like preserving physical books. It's best to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies because eventually they will rot. It's the same way, it's like the fundamental principle of the blockchain is everybody has a copy of the blockchain so that they can verify truth and reality. But there are other ways. Piracy is not the only way. There's really cool projects focused on anti-censorship and preserving digital culture. One of these is Minecraft. Have any of you guys heard of the Uncensored Library? Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's pretty neat, right? It's a web server that you can log onto on Minecraft, and they've built a massive like Romanesque library with like beautiful architecture, and then little zones of different places representing different countries and journalists that were either killed or political prisoners, and you can read their works in Minecraft. The idea being that this is maybe not the first place that the Egyptian government or the Chinese government or the Russian Federation would look to block. And that's kind of the idea behind it. One of the works of a journalist that was featured in this library was Jamal Khashoggi, who was assassinated by the Saudi government in, 2018? And he was a writer for the Washington Post. We need people like this, and we need them protected. And we need their contributions to society as well. This kind of culture shouldn't be erased or censored. And it's great that it is copied and available in places like a Minecraft library, of all places, right? There's other fantastic people too. So I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the federal administration currently pulling CDC data sets in health research. At the beginning of the year, a lot of that was re-uploaded to the internet because of hacktivists like us who are interested in digital preservation and in protecting our public data. Harvard hosted two librarians at Harvard hosted a community data preservation thon, and I had the opportunity to talk with them and reach out and see how it went and what it looked like, the tools that they used. And so this is Ashley Thomas. She is the health science and data and digital services librarian at Harvard, and she was incredibly helpful and gave a really thoughtful response. In talking about the event, she said they got like 20 to 30 people to participate, both online and in person. And although none of them were necessarily super technical or super nerdy, they were able to scrape together and download and then re-upload to the internet dozens of data sets. They uploaded to a program called the Dataverse, and I'll get there. But this quote on the screen that she gave me is, I thought, really kind of poignant. She says, whether out of morals, ethics, or resistance, data preservationists recognize the importance of shepherding as much of our data and knowledge through this period so that in the future, we have a foundation to build on. We don't want to be a less healthy society. We don't want to be a we want to be a less divided society. We want to cooperate with each other and engage with each other thoughtfully. And that requires being able to share our ideas. It requires collaborative research. And it requires trust in each other. So I really appreciated this, and I appreciated her help. And this is like a great thing that communities can do. And this happened all over the country. There was 2 data scientists, Rajan Desi and Jeremy Herzog. They formed the Fulton Ring, and this is national weather risk data that the US government published and then pulled down at the beginning of this year. They've re-uploaded it to make it available, and they have their project listed on GitHub if you guys are interested in. But this is like the kind of thing, right, that we need, and that maybe we were kind of just like, we just accepted that this is like free to us, that the government would give us this data and that we have this open collaboration. But that won't be a constant, as has been proven by the events of this last year. And we need people like these two who are on the game, anticipating the censorship and the removal of the data, and then building tools to protect it. So those are some of the people. Here are some of the organizations. You've all heard of the Internet Archive and the Wayback Machine, but there's like Flashpoint Archive. They're saving Flash games from like the early 2000s. So all those games that you had so much fun playing, they're available to you. They're available to your kids and your grandkids, right? The Dataverse project focused on academic research and protecting that. PermaCC. Remember at the beginning I was talking about link rot and how that's an issue in court cases and legal documents and kind of across the whole internet. PermaCC, you send them a link that you want to have cited in your, say, your document, your research paper, your court case. They download that web page as it is in that moment and then provide a permanent link. Really neat. CDC Restored, they uploaded a huge data trove of data from the beginning of the year, right after that big removal. And there's other organizations that are comparing this to what's out there now. What's been changed? What's been modified? What's been altered? And you'd be surprised, but there is quite a little bit. These are just some of the cool ones. Digital Preservation Coalition. They compile a list of media formats that are going extinct, right? Like file types. When you consider digital preservation, you also have to consider, are the tools that I'm using to read my files and my data going to be around in the future? And so they keep a list of data types that are maybe more open access, open source, and will have the best chance at saving that data and preserving it for the future. So what can you guys do? We talked, right? You all have home labs. So there's ways that you can participate in this data preservation event. And that's where I get to Jason Scott. He founded Archive Team. They work closely with the Internet Archive. And they've built a tool, a virtual machine that you can host and do the data archiving for you. Never have to look at it. They maintain a list of projects that they prioritize to kind of fulfill their mission of protecting web culture and digital media. This is kind of a description of what the organization is. Jason Scott describes it as a loose team of rogue archivists and programmers, loudmouths, sound familiar, right, to the cybersecurity team, cybersecurity crew. And they built this tool, the Archive Team Warrior. And he jokingly called it, when he first released it, the Distributed Preservation of Service, kind of a spinoff of DDoS. And the idea is that you can run a virtual machine on your local computer or in a Docker container. And what it'll do, it'll ping their list of projects that they've prioritized. It'll send it to your instance, and then it'll go out, it'll collect the data, and then it will send it off to the Internet Archive. And it just rinse and repeats, and it runs in the background. And so that's kind of what, man, I kind of flew through this, so I mean, I've got a few more things to talk about, but that's like what you guys can do, right? You can maybe instead of running, or maybe alongside your Plex server, you also have this little Docker container running, right? It's a way to participate in this movement of digital preservation, which is vital. When it's distributed and preserved, we have the greatest chance of keeping it around and evading government censorship, but also digital rot. I'm going to skip past this about me slide. We already talked about me. So then I also like compiled a list of tools that you can do this kind of work for various formats. Web archiving. I talked about the archive Team Warrior, but there's also programs like SiteSucker, which download whole websites, including their digital content, photos and videos and images. Downy4 is a YouTube downloader, but you can also find Python packages on GitHub that do the same thing. Music. There are, and maybe this gets into the realm of piracy, depending on how you decide to use it, but you can, there's tools on GitHub to remove the DRM from your Spotify downloads. There's CD rippers. That's a pirating site. Handbrake is a great tool. You all probably have used that before as well. Ebooks. There's a great tool called DDRM, and that takes you out of vendor lock when you buy digital ebooks from resellers like Kindle or Kobo or any others that you can think of. And video games, this is, I think, really interesting too, is we have seen a whole like groundswell culture show up in the internet from people that are actively trying to save and archive old video games. And what it's also done is it has birthed a new culture of people that are designing games for those old consoles. This is a GBA game jam from 2025. People are still writing Game Boy Advance games in 2025. How do we have that? We have it because people built tools to dump ROMs and make them available. And yeah, so to tie everything together, digital preservation, is vital not just for preserving culture, but for evading censorship and preserving a community identity. And there's things that you guys can do now to help that project. Any questions? Yeah.
I could talk to you about this forever because I'm very passionate about this topic, but I will condense my thoughts. I guess I have two real questions. One is, do you think stuff like the Internet Archive is really long for this world? My thinking is no, because they actually overstepped their boundaries a little bit in the things that they were trying to archive, which got unwanted attention. And two, do you think there's any impetus to really attack kind of the third rail of this, which is that in the US, at least, copyright is just way too long and kind of doesn't recognize, software is eating the world, but software is like the most ephemeral thing on the planet, and like the maximum amount of economic value you'll be able to extract from it is like 5 years or 10 years, not 15 or 70.
Right. 100%. I think that's a totally valid question to ask. Yeah, the Internet Archive has gotten into some hot water because of the work that they do. In 2020, during the COVID pandemic, they had a program. What was it called? It was they made their library and a lot of books available. You could download, you could lend out multiple copies at once. Companies sued quickly because they said that violated fair use and it violated kind of the laws that govern how libraries work in this country. So it's a very valid point, and I think there's another part of your question, right?
So, like the real problem, the reason why me, there's the reason why Colombia might attack a pirate video site in a country has nothing to do with their level of press freedom. It's Colombia. Like the average wage is way lower than the U.S. and piracy is rampant because like even a legitimate like streaming subscription is like more than wage. But I think as it relates to the U.S., like this environment where a vast majority of this content is produced, the real thing that is kind of swept under the rug is just like we should be archiving more of this naturally because more of it should be coming into the public domain. It's not because copyright is way too long.
Yeah, I mean, so that last part of the question, I'll get. Was that okay? Right. So maybe the question about piracy is the wrong question, whether it's ethical or not. Maybe the question is we need to change our approach to what copyright law looks like and what fair use looks like to align with more ethical considerations. Cool. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about this today because we were talking. There was a lot of AI conversation today, and all of the sudden ownership of your data becomes incredibly important because if it's accessible to large language models for scraping, and all this work that Internet Archive has done is now feeding these large language models. Yikes! They can reproduce your data, your copyrighted works word for word. So that sucks for publishers and for authors. But then what happens after that? Like, do we compartmentalize? Shut everything off? Everything is a license agreement. Nobody gets to own any of the data that they purchase. So the book that I buy is no longer mine. The movies that I watch is no longer mine. It's a complex issue, and I think it needs to be solved for sure.
Do you think the loss of data can be accelerated by the reduction in click-through rate as people are using large language models to look things up instead of actually going to the websites and they're getting served ads, which helps the website stay up. ChatGPT just scans it once and then it just serves it through. So do you think that's part of these websites aren't getting revenue? They're not able to stay up. And what are the causes for this data loss? Why is it that 10 years ago, something you could expect to just access, you can't anymore?
Yeah, so some of the causes are people take their servers offline. Companies are breached. Companies go out of business. Users, there was an old website called Mock Pages. Anybody a fan of Legos in here? Yeah? So Mock Pages was like a community photo sharing platform for people to upload their photos of their creations that they built and developed. They're just like their Lego models share. It was a big community, and kind of out of nowhere, they shut down. And a lot of that footage, a lot of those pictures, a lot of those models, gone, kind of forever. So that's the way things are as well, and how it ties to large language models. I think that's an interesting question. I've not thought about the click-through rate and the impact that has on data preservation, but I think that's also a really unique angle to take. Yeah. Do you have like anything to follow on, add on? Cool. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Gotta have a schedule.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Hopefully on time, about 3:30.
Oh, thank you.
Good one, yeah.
You definitely get flow state, like probably like 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
Like the first thing you're doing, like you're doing like and then like you get flow state.
Okay. I feel like I did end pretty I didn't go long enough, but it's fine.
No,
It's fine.
You don't need to like force it to fill the time.
That's true.
I would rather
That's true.
end when it feels good
Mm-hmm.
than like switch it on for an extra 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No, and like you're like you didn't need more time to make your point.
Mm-hmm.
Your point was well made. It hits like I feel freaking motivated to buy more hard drives.
Dude, I'm about to spin up the server. I'm about to dedicate like 10 megabits, 10% of my bandwidth.
I'm just feeding the community's data hoarding instincts.
Dude, it is so real. It's hard that
That's
didn't
yours.
work. I worked fine with mine.
I know. It's whatever.
Great job.
Thank you.
Here's my card if you ever want to follow up.
Will do.
To CyberCore or Intel analysts.
How's it going?
So we're familiar with the Center for Intelligence. Some founders have come
Yeah.
here a couple times. So
Well, thank you so
very
much.
good. Love to hear about your other side. Is this where your master's research is focused, or is this?
I'm
just a fun
undergraduate.
topic? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, no, this is just something that I'm interested in and passionate about.
So you
it was
started
very
at BYU, but then you're continuing to finish your
Yes.
bachelor's off over.
Yeah. I was originally a Arabic and Middle Eastern Studies student,
Oh.
and then I switched over to do information systems and cybersecurity, and I actually just recently switched to data analytics. So I have a broad range of passion. Data analytics, I think, I'm really excited about because it'll enable me to kind of like supercharge my like research around like social topics and social issues, which I'm also clearly incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, we tend to focus a little bit less on the laboratory, on the social type issues or whatever,
Mhm.
but we have an entire division dedicated, which is like 5 departments and 30 some people that are in the various AI and data sciences groups. So
Yeah.
there's a fair amount of it, but more focused on sort of the technical side of things, of how you get it to design reactors,
Yeah.
detect hackers,
Yeah.
optimize energy systems, less on the social issues, if you will, other than maybe the social acceptance of clean energy
Totally.
and things like that. Anyway, very interesting.
Thank you.
Them holding
stock photos of them holding it like a
So what
pen.
brought your family to China?
My dad works for he works for Siemens Healthcare. They build like MRI machines and medical imaging equipment. So he was setting up the like procurement in one of their factories in China. So we lived there for 2 years doing that. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite flashback?
No.
No, you don't.
Well, wait. Was Fireboy and Lava Girl?
Yeah,
That was
a
Flash.
Flash,
Yeah. Okay.
Dude,
Or
that
the
was hard.
the block that was like too tall by like 1 by 2 that you would like rotate around a platform with a
that
hole
one
in it.
was crazy. What did you play? Cool Math?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cool Math.
There was another one that I like played that I can't remember what the website was called, but it's like when we go to the computer lab in school, that's like what I'd do to computer lab classes. I was like,
Submachine is like this like very niche point and click mystery adventure kind of thing.
oh yeah.
And it's just like this like really horror like puzzles are actually like sufficiently challenging. Like that one I really like.
Is this like simulated?
That's some solid.
It's pretty good. You should just look it up. They actually remade it into a Steam game and they updated the graphics.
Really?
But yeah, you can still find it free online. Digital preservation.
Kind of like Henry Stickmin.
Yeah. Henry Stickmin is funny.
Yeah, there was a lot more I could talk about, but it would have gone a little tangenty, like talking about whether or not it's actually worth preserving every piece of data. Oh,
Because you were saying that
You are being live streamed.
saying that program.
Big Brother is watching.
I don't think they need a little clip on his shirt. Actually, they don't really need
Don't change that.
Oh yeah.
Click off, click configure video,
Oh, it was targeting.
camera control. introduce it real quick. Click back on. Sorry, I want to do something real quickly first of all.
Toss me the mic.
Oh.
And it's just.
Speaking to that real quick.
This is a good place for it. Okay, all right. And I suppose I can.
Try to purposely put the recording movies to VHS.
Okay.
They said, hey, okay. Were you gonna try to radio music? Is that centered, I guess, or whatever?
Yeah, that's. I'll try to keep it in that ballpark. Maybe I'll make some marks on the table to remind me where it is.
What if I'm ripping from I think there's a legal argument there. Well, they probably try to do that. No one else. I think it's actually or for TV. Well, that's over here. Start. Yeah. If you actually want the same amount of content. You got
I do.
Like this is kind of what I was talking about. Like I think event tracing for Windows.
Okay.
And it's used in it's used in anti-cheats and EDRs.
Okay. I'll have to do some more reading.
Yeah.
It seems like this is a it's a relatively rapidly developing field. But I found this really good paper. So if you this may not be the best reading paper ever, but it is a journal article, so it's 15 pages long or so, and it's got lots of references. So if you need more to dig into more detail, like the Valorant stuff I'll dig into is actually referenced by this paper, but it's not this paper. This one's a great one to start with.
And they used Vanguard. Is that the one?
Vanguard is the one that is used by Valorant and League of Legends. Yeah. I know. Yeah, I understand that this was going to be recorded, so and actually, unlike other talks, you're not going to be able to see me.
Oh no.
Because the only video feed is that I have the camera, and so they're just going to video that. So that might actually be a good thing. Right.
Here's a website you can send money to, and you can use the pirated version. There was a video game developer that was their sponsor is in Australia totally inconsistent banding models right here in Australia.
Yeah. Well, I would switch this to dark mode, but it's a bit of a hassle at this point.
I think maybe it revolves around what data we should pay for
I feel uneasy when kernel writers are going back to the basics of handwritten.
Why would I need more? Right. We're going to talk conceptual anyway, so we're not going to be like putting code up or anything like that. And frankly, if you saw my design for slides, I'm aesthetically challenged. So.
Get you out of the logo and the template. Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah, I can't draw ISU's logo.
You didn't use your company template. Whoa.
Actually, do we have an example of the ISU logo? Somebody pointed this out to me, and now I can't unsee it. So I see IS, and I think, oh, the ISU, great, that's our spirit mark. Somebody pointed out, yeah, it's just a $sign. Now I can't unsee it. But then again, I've also seen what our tuition rates are. We are not the problem.
Yeah. Well, and
right, we are so cheap.
With the I constantly because we have some other contracts with Iowa State.
Yeah.
I just have to entirely not use ISU as
right. Well, yeah, and we got there first.
Really?
That's why we're ISU and They're not on isu.edu. That is on the internet. We got there first. Over here.
If nobody's watching it, maybe it doesn't matter. But I forget what I was thinking something. I don't have literally not. And certainly, who wants to be preserving gallons and gallons of life for our future generations?
All right. And Joseph, sorry to throw a wrench into things. It's just what I do.
It's a new camera, and even though it's supposed to track you in this into tracking mode,
Right.
it likes to just reset itself. So I'll just like get rid of our zoom. We have zoom really well right now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Who doesn't want to see the shirt, right? Oh, like the reflection? Okay. All right. Oh, that's right. And it like looks for a hand motion to start tracking or something. So I'll just keep my hands away.
I've never even like tried to find it. I just
Exactly. That's
It's so hard to tell. It's sort of tell if they're trying to
Well, there was another quote that I found on research. Some 60% of tweets disappeared by Facebook.
It's probably the bots deleting them.
Right, and maybe a lot of those tweets are not tweets, but
They're getting banned by the
you guys remember January 6th?
Yeah.
I should have had a picture of the guy and anyways, I like watched that live. I was it was during COVID, so I was in Zoom class, and I had C-SPAN of the Senate chambers, and they were certifying but you would say incredibly like no, I supposed to be one gap that most people is what they're doing is just I was there and I was watching the C-SPAN.
So I checked next door and they're still going, right? They're still using that extra 10-minute late start. So we're going to at least start 5 minutes late because the other session hasn't gone out because they're taking up the break time since they started late.
All right. So we could do show tunes.
Yeah, right. And so I was on
Yeah. Could try to do. Could do like shadow signs or something. I don't know.
Data hoarder. Yeah. That's why I'm like, you gotta be a data hoarder. Well, you're running your Plex server. It's also like, you know, archives and government publications.
This will still be interesting, I promise. Yeah. Rootkits are always interesting. Yeah.
It's funny, my gaming is really different.
It's kind of
My underinvestment of it, really try to.
So it breaks some like assumptions I had back in the I think it was just like
Written language is very exciting. So look at Chinese Germans all the Chinese person here, right?
I think I was trying to learn Chinese for like 5 months. And you get to a point where like you can actually like get roots of those characters. And then be like, oh yeah, I kind of understand what
This is a monster.
Yeah.
This is a female.
And so you like it has to do with like community. Actually, kind of like English is weird in that aspect where they aren't.
Well, not usually. Well, so there's a difference, right? So in Spanish, gender is because I tried to solve it. I'm gonna get the server in Chinese. My understanding is it's gonna be a tribal
What?
It's interpreted differently.
All right. We could do show tunes.
I don't think it comes from, that looks like it's a gender.
I don't like the rule of words. In fact, I do like this. So the German word for girl.
You don't get a question.
Did they finally let him go?
You look on the.
All right. They finally let him go.
Well, I think I've been seeing other stuff. Zach gave me, they're gonna.
You see 2 blue lights.
Right. But that's a Zach too.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Zach.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me do.
Interacting with the questions,
Sure,
right? So
sure.
who knows?
Oh yeah.
When that happens, who knows?
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Just one.
So if you get T2,
The-
solid.
Yeah. If you have the choice between knowing the material and great slides, know the material, right? So.
He just took the no corporate logo thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Although we are in my house here, so. I guess technically this is U of I room, but close
Right
enough.
now, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the audio up just to check the mics. Using the mouse, we grab this bar and bring that up. Right there is good. Test, test, test. No, this one isn't working. Come on.
I got a failed fishing.
Okay, well, let's see. Who's over here at, Okay, well, welcome to the afternoon session on track 2, Wayne Onstead at the Idaho National Laboratory. It's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. You really know you're dealing with a talent or a legend or whatever phrase you want to say when they turn in a bio like this. I teach, I hack, I play CTF, I play programming competitions, and that's where he left. So let me add a little bit of flavor. So when he says that he does CTF, you're looking at the person that effectively wrote the kernel for the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge, which was the ultimate of CTF competitions, and he wrote the kernel for it. He's had a variety of different roles at the laboratory and other endeavors. He's presently, one of his associations is with Idaho State University.
Take my class.
He programs and teaches programming and teaches computer science topics. So we are entertained by his non-logo slides. So without further ado, Jason Wright.
Oh. All right. So we're going to go back in time. It is January of this year, and 2 of my students walked into my class, my operating system class, which is Computer Science 4461. I look forward to seeing you all in it. Some of you have been in it. Some of you will be in it. So anyway, but they walked in, and they were both on the esports team. It's Liam Searle and Isabel Doherty said, so how does kernel level anti-cheat work? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So our esports team, this was their second semester existing. And I had gotten interested in what they do and watching them play their games and that kind of stuff. So I was at least familiar with the idea that these things exist, but I didn't know how they worked either. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I've got some spare time at the end of the class. Why don't we spend the remainder of the semester at the end of the semester looking at that? So that's what we did. And you're going to hear it for the second time. The rest of you are going to experience what we talked about. Unfortunately, we did it in about a week, and I'm going to try to compress it down to a day. We'll see how it goes. Okay, ground rules. If something's unclear, stop me right then. Speak up. If I'm not speaking loud enough, particularly folks in the back, I know that I mumble. I'm not always aware when I'm doing it, so just go thumbs up to tell me to speak up. It's totally okay. Aware that I have the problem, not aware when I'm actually doing it. Okay. Yeah, and this is about as high-tech as I get for slides for a class like this. I do have one other slide, but just because I don't want to eventually draw this while you're waiting on for me to draw it. But we're going to come to that. We're just not there yet. So if you were going to take a snapshot of something, this is the thing to got. This is not my original work. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I found this paper really helpful, and it's not so much, it is a good paper by itself, but it also links to an awful lot of other resources. So if it looks like a rootkit and deceives like a rootkit, a critical examination of kernel level anti-cheat systems by Dorner and Klausner, great paper. It's like 15, 20 pages long, goes into extreme detail, which I'm going to summarize very quickly. But first we need to kind of level set. So we're in an operating system class, and it's a 400 level computer science class. Some of you are not there, it's okay. Hopefully it will still be valuable for you. All right, let's talk about the protection model for processes. Oops. So this is the Unix/Windows model. I have two processes that get created. What's a process? What is a process? Yeah, it's a chunk of instructions in memory. That's a good starting place. So a program is, you write it in whatever your favorite language is. It gets compiled. If we're talking about languages that are sane, it gets compiled to an executable. That executable is a program. It can't exist by itself. The operating system has to add some stuff to it. So in a process, there'll be some state information, the value of all of its registers, its page tables, its memory, etc. All that gets added by the operating system. So a program gets loaded off a disk and creates one or more processes. Okay. And all of these will exist in an operating system, which controls switching between the two. We're living in a world where we only have one processor for the sake of argument here. That's not the real world, at least not on any device that you have, except for maybe microcontrollers these days. Multi-core CPUs would mean we'd have more, those show up as multiple processors, right? The multiple threads of execution. We're not living in that world, just for the sake of argument. For the next 45 minutes. You can have your cores back later. Okay. All right. So my process gets loaded off of disk, and once it's running, it's the operating system's job to make sure that one process doesn't interfere with another. Each process has the illusion that it's the only process running on the machine. It's balderdash, because odds are you want to stream music and write code at the same time. Okay, so obviously we need to be able to switch between these things, but as far as each process is concerned, they're completely independent from each other. And the operating system goes a long way into ensuring that illusion. Okay, can one process write into another process? What do you think? Inter-process communication, but that's mediated by something. What were you going to say up here? Not directly, but through the operating system. Yes. That just fills in the blank between the two. And the reason I'm repeating is I forget to repeat things if I don't repeat them pretty quickly. There's not much left up here. Okay. Okay, so in order to get data from one process to another, the operating system's got to be involved. And let's do an example. Eventually, your process might want to read data. Good chance you might want to read a configuration file. Good chance you might want to read something off the network. The operating system will, on your behalf, go perform that operation and then write it into your process's memory space. So the operating system has full access to write to your process all day long. What about more directly? Are there more direct ways for a process to write into another? What's that? Could do DMA. That's mediated by the operating system, though. Well, somebody's got to initiate it, and we don't allow user processes to access DMA directly because we all know that's bad. For all definitions of bad.
Some sort of hack in the operating system.
Could maybe hack the operating system. Let's assume that the operating system is not Windows and may withstand some form of attack. Okay. I'm sorry, what? Oh, and I never mind interruptions, okay? I really don't. As long as we're like roughly following the topic, I'm totally good with it. Okay. So in my class, what did y'all do, Ralph? Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Okay. So I gave them an assignment. Has anybody played the old text game Rogue? I know you have. Okay, you have. So imagine it's a dungeon crawler adventure, but it's all in text. Okay. And you use your arrow. Well, if you're running the original version of it, you're using VI keys to get around. More modern versions allow you to use arrow keys, but that's pretty new technology. We're in the 80s now. Okay, the key thing it had is it's a dungeon crawler, so it has hit points. So when you interact with a monster, it will start to fight you and you'll lose hit points. I had my students make it so their hit points never went to 0. In fact, one student set them to like 10,000 and make sure they stayed there. That was actually Isabella, as a matter of fact. How was she able to do that? Magic? Where are they stored? So where is the data for a process stored? Not a program, but a process. In its own, so each process has its own memory space. That's what I'm depicting here. It's actually each process's memory space. I, as a single process, can write to anywhere in my own process space. That's not completely true. I can't write over the text of the program, the actual code. Those pages are read-only, but I can write anywhere that data can be written. But my students were able to cheat. Now, I know you all write perfect code first time. You never have to use a tool called a debugger. How does a debugger work? Okay. It asks the operating system, and in the Linux world, this is called ptrace. It's process trace. In the Windows world, it's something far more complicated, and I just don't recall what it is off the top of my head. But this process, let's say this is process 42 and this one's 54. I can ptrace process 42. And here's what it allows me to do. It allows me to stop it, start it, and without operating system intermediation, read and write from its memory. Okay, so how do we cheat? Use ptrace. But it's more elegant than that, but that's where we start. Okay, so dungeon crawler. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say dungeon crawler, right? Okay, I'm not that old, I guess. All right. What if you search through all of the memory of your target process while you're debugging it? Live now, the process is running. And you found where the hit points, well, here's how you find where the hit points are stored. And this is kind of a hack, but it's kind of cool. So I know that my hit points start out at 12. So I go looking through the entire address space of the process, and I find every occurrence of the number 12 and note them. Put that aside. I then go interact with a monster. I get hit. Now I have 9 hit points. I go through finding every location that has the number 9 in it, and set intersection tells me where hit points are stored, right? There's only one place that would have gone from 12 to 9. Sometimes you have to do it multiple times, but this works for the most part. Okay, so now we know hit points. Since we can write to another process's memory, we can just say, oh, our hit points dropped. That didn't happen. Let's set them back up again. So we had 12 hit points, we went to 9, now we have 10,000 hit points, for instance. Okay. That's the environment that games have to run in. I'm going to switch gears. So do we have any Valorant players? Oh, go ahead, please. Probably not a Valorant player, by the way. Every system I run has an MMU.
Well, they did at some point.
Yeah, that's true. So it depends. If we're doing multiprocessing without an MMU, these things have to be located in different chunks of memory. So like you're thinking of things like.
I guess, is it the ptrace tells the OS to run? Is it the ptrace tells the OS to write into process 52?
No. Process 54 says ptrace process 42, and now process 42, or excuse me, process 54 can read and write to 42's memory.
But they're not in different virtual memory spaces?
They are in different virtual memory spaces. Yeah, yeah. The debugger can interact with it and access the page tables of that other process. There's a caveat there, but we'll come to it in a minute. So, any Valorant players? We've got a couple. Overwatch, Marvel Rivals. Oh, wow, okay, you're hitting the gamut. League of Legends. So yeah, we get at least one League of Legends. Okay, so Valorant and League of Legends are we're going to spend the most time on because Riot's Vanguard engine is such a total rootkit. It's amazing. NetEase that's used by Marvel Rivals is also bad, but not as bad as Riot Vanguard. Okay, so what allows this to work, and the caveat that I mentioned is in the world of operating systems, we have this concept of a user. Operating system people will usually call this the principal. We're just going to dispense with that. They're users. And the ptrace thing only works in two cases. Either the ptracer is root can do anything, or process 42 and 54 have to be owned by the same user. So in other words, I can ptrace my own processes, but I can't ptrace your processes running on the same machine. This is the Unix model of things. I can do anything I want to in my sandbox, but your sandbox is different, unless I'm root, and then all bets are off. Okay. And see, did I have to? No, I didn't have to give them root access. I don't like giving students root access to my machines. Yeah. Not unless they ask really nicely. Although I do say, go poke around on my machine. And I have yet to have I've had one person say, hey, should I have access to this? And luckily in that particular case, it was, yeah, you can have access to that. That's okay. All right. Okay, so that's the environment we're in. Now, let's look at it from the point of view of a game developer. Game developer, particularly for games where we're playing online multiplayer, wants to accomplish some goals. They want their game to be fun. They want you to spend money on it. Okay, so given those two requirements, what else do they care about? Yeah, go ahead. Fair. Game's got to be fair. If the game's not fair, you won't spend money on it. You'll stop playing it. Okay? Let's talk about what they care about. All right. Fairness. What else? The game developer or the producer or whatever. Well, that's really a fairness thing, right? Yeah. I'm just going to lump it in that category. So Ginger, and then we'll come back to patience. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll call that DRM. It's kind of close. Patience, and then over here. Get rid of a VAC. Tell me what VAC ban is. What's that? Oh. Okay. Okay, that's probably going to be server-side stuff. We can't deal with that here. Yeah, you just create a new account and keep going, like keep playing. Right. Okay.
Is the accessibility of a game relevant?
Oh, yeah. So if it crashes a lot, you won't spend money. You will stop playing it.
Or if
so
can't play it on my Steam Deck.
But there's two kinds of reliability that we care about. It's not just that the game doesn't crash. Okay. So there's something. Okay, go ahead. Perform. Yeah. If we drop the frame rate to 2, adding our anti-cheat measures, nobody's going to play the game. Nobody spends any money. Not any fun. Okay, so it's got to be fast. And that's probably, frankly, the most important thing. Got to be fast. If it's good, that's even better.
Artistically appealing.
I love reading kernel code. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But show me a well-written API and I'm totally there. All right. So I'm going to add the word reliability again. But by this, what I'm getting at is the idea that I'm not using very technical terminology here. If I accuse you of cheating, I need to be right most of the time. I can be wrong some of the time. My daughter's boyfriend got banned from Overwatch. He's never cheated in his life, and got a 1-month ban. At least he says he's never cheated in his life. I don't know. Let's take him at his word, though. So in other words, he got accused incorrectly, and we can accept some amount of that. As long as we're not banning half of our users, that would be bad, right? We lose revenue. And another thing that we'd like to be able to do is identify the principal, identify who cheated, so that we can make sure they don't just set up another account like Patience is going to do. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Digital rights management. Making sure that you get what you pay for and nothing else. Yeah, that's the way I think of it. You probably have a better definition than that, but let's go with mine for now. Okay. Okay. I'm going to spend some time on this identification thing. Let me check the time. Okay. I'm going to spend some time on this identification thing. How do you identify somebody is who they say they are? They could just tell you. Yeah. Serial numbers on components. What components have serial numbers? Hard drives. Every hard drive has a unique serial number. And the operating system, Windows, very helpfully puts it in the registry. Thank you, Windows.
You also have your internet network interfaces, so they all have MAC addresses.
Yes, so every network interface has a burned-in ROM that has a unique number assigned to it. It's globally unique number, and that's called a MAC address. Media Access Control, if anybody cares about the acronym. So if I see somebody with a particular disk, or I see somebody with a particular MAC address, I can say with some confidence that's the same computer. Does that make sense? So when I ban somebody, I may take these two things and say, if I see somebody coming to play my game with that disk serial number or that MAC, or some subset of them even, then they're not allowed to play. Let's see. Let's see. BIOSes have serial numbers, motherboards. Intel had the wacky idea in the early 1990s to add a unique number to every processor. Fortunately, they got rid of that. Because the first thing every operating system of the day did is disable it. So why would you ship a feature that everybody disables? It was a part of the CPU ID instruction set. There are some missing leaves if you go through the Intel documentation for CPU ID that you can discover, or you can kind of see where they got deleted out.
Why was that not adopted?
Because then you could uniquely identify a particular processor. It doesn't really matter. Right. You can still identify the machine. Right. We have all this other stuff. But most of this other stuff was added after that, though. Hard drives in the 1980s and 90s didn't have serial numbers that you could query, at least not through the normal operating system methods. There were usually vendor-specific tools you could get at it. So, okay. let's talk about how anti-cheat does its thing. And keep in mind that what we're trying to accomplish is fairness, making sure that the users get what they pay for and nothing else. It's got to be reliable, it's got to be fast, and we've got to have good accusations. If I say you're cheating, you're cheating. If I say you're not cheating, I don't really care. And I've got to be able to identify you. All right. So let's go back to our example in the simplified world of Unix processes. I am process 42. How do I protect myself from process 54?
Recruit a different user to run it.
Yeah, we could switch users. However, you ultimately own your machine, right? At least I hope you do. If you've stolen it from somebody, don't tell me. But you own your machine. So if you think of this kind of a right to repair thing, you should have access to all the pages. I love that your talk was right before mine. So I should have access to all the pages of every process on my computer. I paid for that DRAM, right? And I can as a user process. I can ultimately promote myself to root because I own the machine, and now I've got access to the entire address space of the entire computer. Uh-oh. How do you hide from the operating system itself if the operating system's not trustworthy? Okay, that's impossible. I'll just go ahead and give that away. But there are some ways where we can detect where things are going wrong. That's where kernel level anti-cheat comes in. It has to be kernel level because any protections we put on our own process can be easily disabled by somebody else. Easily. If you have a bunch of checks, I can attach to that process and say, those checks, how about I replace those with a whole bunch of no-op instructions? We'll just paint right over that. I can do that because I can always access every page in my machine. All right, so that's the world we live in. So how do the anti-cheat guys do what they do? Let's see, and there are kind of 4 major products that were considered in the paper that I listed at the beginning. There's BattleEye, which is used by Rainbow Six Siege and PUBG. I've never played either of those. Easy Anti-Cheat, which is Epic. That's Fortnite, Apex Legends, Faceit, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Never played Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Not my thing. I also can't play. I have played Valorant, but I'm too slow. I'm old, right? I walk into a room, I die. That's what happens in Valorant. But it is still the most interesting. And Vanguard, originally, their paper says that that Vanguard is only used for Valorant, but that's not true anymore. It's used for League of Legends now. So what most of these packages do is they show up as another kernel driver. In other words, they run as a part of the operating system itself. They get loaded here. They're just another part of the operating system. So we can do things like scan every process on the machine. So we can look to see, was the code loaded off the disk for valorant.exe the same thing that's in memory? We can do those kind of checks. Those checks are kind of slow, but we can do them. And only the operating system can do that. Please. And just speak up. It's totally okay.
I don't know if this is like naive or not, but if you can load anti-cheat software at the OS level, what makes that different from malware?
Exactly. What makes it different from malware? And I'm not making fun of you. You should be asking that question. And by the end of this talk, you'll be, do I really need that game? Should I have a separate computer for that? Yes, you should is the answer. There is very little difference between Riot's Vanguard and your average rootkit. Very little difference. Okay. So rootkits would also look for, the difference is Riot's going to look at Valorant.exe and try to make sure that what came off the disk is still what's in memory. It hasn't been patched by another process. It will scan other processes looking for known cheat software. Rootkits would look for things like antivirus software, antivirus processes, your Norton utilities or whatever. They would load kernel drivers as well if they could to make sure that they're not going to be discovered. The best way to hide is to be in the operating system. Even better is if you can be in the hypervisor. But, okay. So a technique, Windows has this idea of create remote thread. Is anybody familiar with create remote thread? It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I'll describe it. It allows me to create a thread of execution, which means I get to run inside another process's memory, and I get to supply the code for that. It's an API call. Look it up, create remote thread. So in other words, I can create a program. I can create really it's kind of a process that's running inside the memory of another process, so I can mess with it on the fly.
Those two processes have to be owned by the same user?
Yeah, they do have to be on, well, it is a thread created inside another process. So it becomes just another part of that process.
Right, but
Yeah.
both those processes have to be.
Yes, the one that's spawning the thread in the remote process both have to be owned by the same person. But remember, I can be root or administrator if you want to talk in Windows terms. Okay. Okay, so given that I can do this, and that's bad, how does Riot detect that this has happened? And this is actually kind of elegant.
You said earlier that you can scan all the processes that are running?
Uh-huh.
So does it have to do with that?
Sort of. I can also ask the operating system where the data for something came from. And here's where that becomes important. I can ask the operating system, so this page of code that you're executing right now, where did it come from? Did it come from a file on disk? If it came from a file on disk, I can go compare the two. And usually with create remote thread, for things that are nefarious, there will be no associated file. It doesn't exist on the disk. Basically, I can inject arbitrary code into another process and run it without having a file on disk. So what Vanguard does is it scans a process to see, and I've had little ones, it's not going to bother me a bit. Totally fine. So the Riot can scan its memory and look for pages that have been brought into the process that don't have a file associated with them. So we can kind of detect that this kind of thing has happened. Let's see. How does antivirus software work? Or at least antivirus software from the 1990s or so. It's the last time I spent any time looking at them. Yeah, definition-based pattern recognition, absolutely. So we can just go scan for byte patterns of things that we've seen before. So, and talking from Katya's talk earlier, if we've seen it before, we can make inferences about it. If we've never seen it before, magical thinking. And being a kernel driver, we can actually intercept new processes being created. We can go, hey, you're firing up a new process. Let me just put that on pause for a minute, look at it and see if it's bad. So we can make sure that nothing bad gets loaded after our program starts. So let's see. Other stuff we can do process enumeration. Basically look at the name of every program that's running and look for bad. see. A common thing for good cheating software is it will want to make a call out to the network. What are they calling out to the network for? Whether you paid your subscription to the cheat service or not. Got to get paid, right? If I'm writing cheat code, a good one, that auto aimer or whatever, I want to get paid for that. I want to make sure subscription models are totally a thing here. Evidently, I'm told. Actually, I haven't looked.
This and the piracy talk are so good.
Indeed. Let's see. Another clever one is stack walking. When you execute a function, it creates a new stack frame, and maybe that function calls another function, which calls another, etc. We can walk that chain backwards and make sure that the chain makes sense, that somebody hasn't injected another step in the chain. It basically has tried to hijack a particular function call. That's what stack walking is all about. All right. Now we're going to talk about the coolest feature of Vanguard. Okay. The Unix world makes this complete illusion that every process has a linear chunk of memory that starts at approximately 0 and goes to approximately, I don't know, let's call it 3 gigabytes. It can vary. On 64-bit machines, it could be a lot larger. Let's think 32-bit terms for the moment. Addled brain. Okay. That's not how it's laid out in real memory, though. Wouldn't it be great if we could lay out every process in its own chunk of memory? What's the problem with laying everything out linearly like this? Yeah. Yes, processes will want to allocate more memory. And if I stack them really close together, now I've got a problem. Wouldn't it be nice if I could scatter things all over memory? That's where this comes in. This is how it really works. This is what it looks like. This is how it works. Every time an address is presented to the CPU, it does this on 64-bit machines. I bet you all thought your machines were 64-bit. You've been lied to, by the way. They're only 48 bits as far as physical addresses go. If you want more bits than that, you can have it, but you won't need that till you get to about a petabyte of RAM. If you have that problem, come talk to me. Okay. All right. So when an address is presented, so I want to go access a particular byte in memory, it gets broken up into a whole bunch of pieces. That topmost bits look up in a table called PML4. Why is it called PML4? 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you think the one for 64-bit, real 64-bit machines is? It's PML5. Intel has totally gotten unoriginal in naming things. Okay. And don't get caught up on the names, but each part of the address is a lookup to a different table. So the whole virtual address is 48 bits long, 0 to 47, and the first topmost bits are used to look up an entry in the PML4, which points to an entry in points to a PDPT. Don't try to say it 100 times fast. This index is an index into that table, which points to a page directory table, PDT. Don't get caught up on this. What's important is what Riot does. Riot modifies the page table handler in Windows. Here's what that means from a practical point of view. Every time you load a program off of disk, Riot's code's running on your machine, whether you're playing Valorant or not. It's running in the operating system kernel because the first thing it does when it fires up, it loads itself as a kernel driver and then it patches the operating system itself. Page table handler, yeah, we're going to modify. It's actually a function called, what is it called? Swap. swap context hook. It is a hook that gets called every time we change from one process to another. So every time you go back and forth between writing code and listening to music, Riot's code's running. That sure does need to be reliable, right? And if your machine's still running and you have Valorant installed, they must have done something right, right? They must have some smart folks or really lucky folks. Folks don't get that lucky writing kernel code, though. All right. Here's why it overwrites that handler. Let's see. To get this whole ball rolling, there's a register colloquially called CR3. Intel's naming conventions. Can't do anything with them. It is the entry into this process. It's the one that points at this PML4. It starts the whole process. When Valorant.exe runs, since they're running in swap context hook, they say, oh, you were going to switch to Valorant.exe? That's not the table I'm going to use. It creates a shadow version of this PML4. And it has real entries in it. The data structures in Valorant are some of the most important ones are called world in all caps and player in all caps. That's where the good stuff is. That's the position of every player and the layout of the world and how things are interacting. I don't know much more depth than that. I haven't reverse engineered Valorant, not going to. I ain't got that kind of time. So if you are another process, if you ask the operating system, so what's the layout of Valorant.exe? You'll get this version of the PML4. And the same XXX points to nothing. So if I want to go access the world and I'm not Valorant.exe, when I ask the operating system, so tell me about the page table layout of Valorant.exe, the operating system gives its version of what it thinks Valorant looks like. It says, well, its PML table is here, and then me as the evil program can go access that and then walk the rest of the thing. See the rest of how the memory is laid out for this process. Since it points to nothing, as soon as I try to go access those pages, bad things happen. My cheat software crashes. Crashing cheat software, Valorant doesn't care about that, but you're not going to pay for it if it doesn't work. Thank you. And how long have you been holding that up? And I've been ignoring you. Okay. Sorry about that. You may need to like wave it or something. All right. So when the operating system switches to Valorant, the kernel driver, since it's hooked, swap context hook, can say, here's the real value for CR3, that real entry point, which has the real entries in it. Yeah.
So in this case, is it just a memory translation offset, or is it
Yeah.
actually copying memory to another location?
So Valorant when it creates the memory region for this real world and player, it marks it as being a part of its special sauce for the driver. And the driver knows to allocate it into this area pointed to by the shadow PML4. Am I getting closer to answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So, and again, the important thing is that when it's Valorant.exe, everything behaves as normal. When we're switching to this process, we write the real value of PML4 there. The kernel driver for Valorant does that. I'm picking on Valorant. This also happens for League of Legends. If it is somebody else and they ask the operating system, what's the layout of this process? They get the wrong value for the entry point to how memory is laid out for this process. They don't know where to start. they don't know how to find this version of the table in memory. It's in memory somewhere. It has to be. But where is it? I don't know. Does that help? Okay. And if I haven't made it clear, let me know. All right. Actually, I should, oh, never mind. Let's see. There's one other kind of clever thing, and this is a lot simpler than all this page table stuff. How do you know what time it is? You can check your phone. Okay, right. How does an operating system know what time it is? Where does Android get it from? What? Yeah, so the time server is not a bad place. When it first boots up, the operating system stores. It does. So the CMOS battery keeps a little clock running, and when the operating system boots, it reads that clock. After that point, it maintains its own tick. It keeps a timer running, which runs every n seconds for some value of n, and keeps the time. Okay. What if I set a timer for 1 second? Okay, my timer will go off after 1 second. Right? This is not rocket science, right? I can also ask a remote machine, like let's say I were a game developer and had servers for playing my multiplayer game. I could also, those I control. I have physical control over those probably. I can set a timer on those to run once a second. What if I get different values back? What happened? In other words, here's what's going on. I ran a 1 second timer on the user's machine, my player's machine, and I ran a 1 second timer on my servers, which I control, and they're completely bulletproof. They'll never be hacked. And I get different numbers for how much time elapsed. What happened? Could be solar radiation. Okay. Might have dropped packets. That will give me a little bit of variance, but what will really give me variance if I happen to find myself on the user machine running in a hypervisor. Hypervisors have a hard time keeping precise time correct. If I find myself in a hypervisor, then I know I can't trust anything, even at the operating system level. Ouch. But I can just say, hey, you're running in a hypervisor. Valorant's not supposed to run in a hypervisor. Violating terms of service. Goodbye. And exit. And Riot does that. Okay. So hopefully this has been a good CS 4461. We'll have an exam next week. But before that, are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first a comment, I guess. If you like this talk, there's a really good thing on YouTube from Tony Chen at Microsoft about platform security on the Xbox, which is really good.
But they've got an easy problem. The Xbox guys have it easy.
They
They control the hardware.
Well, but you have to assume that some people owning your hardware, which you can't change.
Yeah, okay, that's true. You're right.
Anyway, my question is, obviously this anti-cheat is patching in its own version of its basic system services to the OS. How much of this is run consistently versus at launch? Because if you're checking, did we load this binary from disk? If that runs on game launch, then potentially I can work with the loaded software. So I would presume that not every check is actually not every single one of those things is actually being checked all the time.
Yeah, and I don't have good information for which checks are run at what point. I do know that creating and deleting the hook for swap context happens at driver load time. So when Valorant, when Windows is loading its device drivers, that one gets put in there. So every context switch, you're running Riot's code on your machine. Now the memory scanning and stuff, I think only takes place while you're running the game. So it will do one expensive search first and then do cheap ones because it can stop new programs from starting. Go ahead.
Doesn't the presence of this interaction with the kernel, with the
tell that to Riot and Microsoft. I'm not playing in that game, but they totally do that, right? They totally change and hook functions in the Microsoft kernel. But folks have been doing that for about 40 years at this point. Am I right in the time frames there?
I think Microsoft does want people paying Windows.
Well, they want people paying their license fees for Windows for sure. And if playing Valorant gets you to do that, then yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how Riot gets away with it and other folks don't. I don't know. Go ahead, Ralph, and then I'll come up there. Can you containerize it? No, because it will detect that it's running in a hypervisor using that tick check. Okay, so okay, you're right. Containers are different, but my guess is they would detect that they're running in the container somehow, and I don't know how you do that off the top of my head. I know. By the way, I've written 2 papers on how you decide that you're in a hypervisor, though. Up there. Yeah, so each of the softwares for doing anti-cheat will do VM detection. It's cheap and easy, relatively speaking, to detect if you're in a VM. And they know if they're running in a VM, number one, the game's not going to perform well. And it opens them up to a whole lot of cheating, right? Because in the hypervisor, you can't even detect that the operating system is messing with you. You can then start messing with the Valorant or the Riot Vanguard stuff like, oh, you said you were going to hook swap context? Let me get the real value and print it somewhere so I can use it. Right? You can do that in the hypervisor and not be detected. So, and hypervisor detection is cheap and easy. So might as well. The tick check is one that's very reliable, but there are about 50 different ways of detecting you're in a hypervisor. Wayne mentioned that I did work I didn't write an operating system kernel for CyberGround Challenge, but I did write a hypervisor.
Something that maybe totally wrong. I thought like OS X doesn't allow you to put drivers in the kernel.
Valorant doesn't run on Mac OS.
And that was going to be
So if you want to get your Riot games fix, get a Windows machine. And that's probably the major reasons why is they can't do good anti-cheat as far as their point of view is game's got to be fair, right, all that stuff. And if they can't ensure that, it's a hard platform to support.
League of Legends does. So I think they have like whatever it's doing on macOS. It's like you use the Apple supported services. So you're treating kernel detention has gone away, but there's still kernel quasi-kernel interfaces. Like if you want to run a hypervisor on macOS, you use the Apple software.
Why doesn't easy anti-cheat run on Linux?
What games do I run under Linux?
Well, no, why doesn't easy anti-cheat just run on Linux? You should be able to do this.
Yeah, well, in other words, why don't they port like Valorant to, is that the question, is why don't they port the games to Linux?
Well,
Or
the game works on Linux. You get banned if you make it work on Linux stuff, right?
yeah, because
If it's the anti-cheat on, it will like back ban you for using hypervisor or whatever it's doing.
my guess is that they're trying to keep the level playing field by making sure that they've got anti-cheat in place. It's my guess is why they don't support other operating systems. I don't know.
You're asking more about how do they know if you're only 9?
No, I'm saying like
That's not hard.
Easy anti-cheat run on Linux.
Having
Linux support.
It's hard to write one driver that works in multiple operating system kernels. Done it. It's painful. If you thought portability in C was bad at the user space, try it in the kernel. Like in Linux, there's no printf. It's of course called print K, in case you were curious. That's a really minor example though. Printf, by far. BSD Unix has had printf in the operating system kernel since 70s. And Linux did not exist in the 70s. All right.
This is gonna show how. This is gonna show how little I know on topics. But I know, like, when you want to play one of these games, you have to go into BIOS and change
The trusted platform module.
secure boot
Yes.
setting, right?
The
So
TPM.
what does that have to do? Why do you have to change that?
That is a long discussion. I imagine you have some expertise in the TPM space. Oh, okay. And I'm guessing by Wayne standing that I am out of time.
So they've been kind of going 5 and 10
Okay.
minutes late because so let's keep this discussion going if you can answer it in 5 minutes.
I can answer in 5 minutes. So trusted platform module. And the reason why you all have to upgrade to Windows 11. It's not because Microsoft is a money grubbing corporation. They are, but that's not the reason you need to upgrade to Windows 11. They totally are. But the reason you need to upgrade is they have added support for cryptographically signed loading of the kernel off the disk, making sure that it is valid when it comes off the disk. Kind of like all this anti-cheat stuff does. And the versions of the standard that are supported by Windows 10 and before aren't secure enough. That we found holes in them. And I say we, I'm putting myself in the category of folks who've worked in the space, and I haven't. But vulnerabilities have been found in all of the trusted platform module versions before 2.0. So we can find ways around, we can load Windows kernel modules that are unsigned into kernels. We can get our code running in the operating system kernel. Supposedly that's fixed in TPM version 2, which Windows 10 doesn't support, Windows 11 doesn't support the early versions of TPM, and your hardware is getting obsolete because it doesn't support the hardware version, TPM 2.0 and above. I've got a machine, it's a great machine. It cost about $8,000 when it was bought, but it was my workstation until last year because I couldn't run Valorant on it, because I couldn't enable secure boot. Windows 11, old TPM. Machine was bought in 2016. I can get Windows 11 on, but not with the TPM enabled, not with secure boot enabled. Yes, the TPM is a trusted platform module. It's a piece of hardware which stores cryptographic keys. And the idea with the trusted platform module in the very short version